Our very special guest is Ken Thompson, the newly elected Brooklyn District Attorney, although he's been on the job for 10 months. District Attorney Thompson, welcome for coming on the show.
Thank
welcome
you for
to the show.
having me, and congratulations on your re-election.
Thank you very much. You've been in office for almost a year. It's been about 10 months, a little more than 10 months, and there's so much to speak about. There's no shortage of urgent issues. It seems that your office is involved in so many remarkable cases. Can you just tell us a few cases that you've been involved in so far since you've become district attorney?
Well, first of all, I'm honored to be the new Brooklyn DA. I have started to go about the important work that the people of Brooklyn voted for me to perform. One of the main things I've started to do is to go through these wrongful conviction cases. As you may know, I inherited a mess with respect to these cases. Over 100 of these cases were waiting for me in January. And these are men mostly men who maintain that they were wrongfully convicted of murder by the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. And so I have been busy looking at those cases, and we've looked at about 30 of them. And the majority of the cases we reviewed were standing by the conviction. And when I say we, I put together a new unit, Greg, called the Conviction Review Unit of many seasoned prosecutors. Many folks don't know that the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office is the third largest DA's office in the country, behind Los Angeles and the city of Chicago. And so I have almost 1,200 employees. I have over 500 prosecutors. But yet in January, when I took office, only 2 out of those 500 plus prosecutors were assigned to looking at these wrongful conviction cases. I thought that was ridiculous. And so I created a conviction review unit of 10 prosecutors. I got a very prominent law professor at Harvard Law School, his name is Ronald Sullivan, to come down and lead my unit, because this is important work, right? And so we've gone through about 30 cases. Majority of the cases we're standing by, but in 10 of the cases, we have concluded that men right in Brooklyn were wrongfully convicted for murders that they did not commit. And so I moved in the interest of justice to vacate those convictions. And I recently vacated the conviction of a man named David McCallum, who was in prison for almost 30 years.
Wow.
And his co-defendant, Willie Stuckey, they were both convicted. They were arrested at the age of 16, convicted of murder of a man, an innocent man who was abducted at gunpoint in Queens and driven to Brooklyn and murdered. These 2 young 16-year-old boys were put on trial for the murder by my now office. There was no evidence, physical evidence, DNA evidence, or even testimonial evidence that linked them to the crime, except for very short videotape confessions that both boys gave, but they were pointing the finger at each other. We looked at this case and concluded, after 10 months of thorough investigation, that both Mr. McCallum and Willie Stuckey were wrongfully convicted. Now, Willie Stuckey died at the age of 31 in prison from a massive heart attack while maintaining that he was innocent. And so I moved to vacate his conviction as well. We did that about a week ago. Mr. McCallum is now out of prison. We moved to free him, and we asked Willie Stuckey's family, his mother, to come to court so she could stand in his place. I mean, we're doing so much in Brooklyn, but I wanted to lead with the wrongful conviction cases, because wrongful convictions undermine the integrity of the criminal justice system. No one, no member of Local 237, no person who lives in Brooklyn or New York City should want people in prison for murders that they did not commit. And as a new DA, I'm determined to make sure that we correct miscarriages of justice.
Local 237 represents 8,000 New York City Housing Authority employees.
Yes.
And it is a great concern to us that crime has seemed to be going up in the New York City public housing, so much that we asked the mayor to support us in having a law passed in Albany, which the mayor's office, Mayor de Blasio, did. And now if you assault an employee in the New York City Housing Authority, it's an automatic felony. how do you see crime in the New York City Housing Authority?
Well, you're talking to someone who comes out of public housing here in the city. I was raised by a single mother who raised 3 children alone in public housing before she became a New York City police officer back in 1973. I am determined to make sure that the residents of public housing in Brooklyn don't have to live with violence and drugs and everything else. And so one of the things that we've done in the Brooklyn DA's office is we've created a new unit to deal with gun violence. It's called the Crime Strategies Unit. The Manhattan DA's office has a similar unit. We're building ours now. The Crime Strategies Unit is created and designed to go after those who are committing many of these acts of violence, not only on the streets of Brooklyn, but in these public housing developments. People don't realize that many of the people who are doing these shootings, it's just a small percentage of them. And they come in and out of the criminal justice system all the time, and we don't pay attention to them. We need to pay attention to them when they come in for, let's say, riding in a stolen car or hopping the subway. So Crime Strategies is designed to identify who we call drivers of crime, the small percentage of folks who are committing havoc on the streets of Brooklyn and in our housing projects, to keep them off the street. Now, one of the things that we're going to focus on in particular is the crime specifically in our housing developments, because if you look at Brownsville, where the 73rd precinct is based, we lead the city in shootings and homicides year after year.
Yes.
That's unacceptable. You have a number of your members who work there. They work in Tilden, they work in Van Dyke. And so we need to do more. We need to pay attention as law enforcement, because I believe that we can do better, and we are. And one of the ways I'm going to do it is with the Crime Strategies Unit I created.
We also represent school safety agents,
Yes.
and throughout the public school system, and we are concerned about maybe a change in policy with the, I would say, the strategy in the school systems. I understand that the American Civil Liberties Union has this notion that the children are being piped from the schools to prisons, but the fact that we mentioned the gang unit, that has not been addressed in the New York City public school system, and the gangs are still operating in the school system as well as in the streets. So, I mean, the schools could use a program like you have of monitoring GPS, because you can't just say, we're going to let them go. You got to have, like you say, you can't save everybody, but for those who save, you got to have somewhere to put them.
Yes, you know, my office has the School Advocacy Bureau, and we are determined to protect school safety agents. We will not allow our agents to be attacked while they're in these schools there to protect our children. And so we've had about 13 cases so far of assaults on school safety agents. And we have a dedicated unit in the Brooklyn DA's office to protect school safety agents. And that unit it works closely with the school safety agents, and whenever there is an assault, we flag it in my office, and we pay close attention to it, because we cannot allow anyone to attack our agents.
You have so many things to offer. I mean, you could have done anything else in life, and you have done a lot of things in life. What drives you to come to work every day and be the district attorney of Brooklyn?
What drives me is, I think, had it not been for my mother, Clara Thompson, you know, she was struggling in the projects, raising 3 kids, and believed back in 1973 that she could become a New York City police officer when they had no women on patrol, black or white. They had women police officers, but they were regulated to the precincts. They were like just to process arrest. But there came a point where women were allowed to go on patrol. And my mother believed that she, as a black woman raising 3 kids alone in public housing, she could become a cop. And she did in '73 and served for 21 years. It was extraordinary. If it was not for her, she left an indelible impression on me. I don't think I would have ran for DA, because I feel strongly about justice and safety and fairness. And so what I intend to do as Brooklyn DA is to serve the people of Brooklyn with honor and distinction, to keep them safe, but also to make sure our criminal justice system is based on fundamental fairness. I don't believe that I would have I would be sitting here as DA had it not been for my mother's courage back then. I mean, there was no women on the streets. For her to believe that she could become one and endure the harassment she endured in the 70s, as she laid the foundation for all of women cops now. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here. And so I think I tie my strong belief in fairness and justice to her. She put her life on the line for the city. I'm just following in her footsteps.
You know, I could tell you, I don't know if you mentioned that when you were running, but it's pretty compelling, the story you just told us. And I can remember in 1973, I didn't see any women.
No,
Not
that's
even
when
in
they
the
came on the
precinct.
job.
But I remember some wearing skirts. I remember the skirts and the blouses. So you just took me back, because I grew up in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And we moved in 1974. I grew up in the old 88th precinct, which was the old 80th precinct.
Okay.
On Grand Avenue between Park and Prospect. I went there the other night just to look at the building and look how it changed. And I said I could remember growing up as a kid. We're going to ask you to come back.
Greg, it would be my honor.
Thank you.
And I thank you for all the great work you're doing.
Thank you.
If we can do some things together to protect your members, to make their jobs easier, please just let me know.
I will, and also belong to Council for Unity, so I'm involved with the gangs and everything else. So I would love to introduce you to that organization too, and I believe we could do some good work and help a lot of these children in the school system.
I would be honored to support your leadership.
Thank you. You've been listening to Reaching Out, a very special guest, District Attorney, newly elected District Attorney in Brooklyn, Ken Thompson, who is going to make a mark in this city and in this country. He has the third largest district attorney's office, and already he has speaking engagements across the country. So he's going to be someone that we're going to know about in the future nationally.